that he expects the war to end within 2 or 3 weeks. But the president's comments do not line up with the IDF's scheduled war plan to capture Gaza City by October. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Israel is still in the process of mobilizing the reserves, and the offensive to capture Gaza City is not due to begin until next month and conclude in October. Currently, tanks are gathering at the border and IDF operations inside Gaza are ongoing, but the plan to move 1 million Gazans from the north to the south of the enclave and the IDF maneuvers to capture Gaza City are only due to begin in the middle of September at the earliest. But during a meeting attended by Secretary of State Rubio and hostage talks envoy Steve Witkoff, U.S. President Donald Trump predicted that the war in Gaza will reach a conclusive ending in 2 or 3 weeks.
It's a terrible situation over there, terrible, terrible situation. But it's coming to a head, it's coming to an end. I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to have a pretty good conclusive ending.
Instead of providing an explanation for his optimism, Trump instead turned to Secretary of State Rubio and U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff for confirmation.
Oh, there's a diplomatic push? No, yes, there has been, yeah, sure. Right now, Steve, I would say very serious diplomatic push. Marco or Steve, Marco, do you want to answer that first?
It's never stopped. We've always looked to find a solution there. Ultimately, as the president said, we want it to end. It has to end with no Hamas.
Steve, where are we?
I would say that we wouldn't be anywhere but for the president's truth last week, which was a statement to Hamas that they better get their act together and get to the peace table. But for that, it would have been all stalled. So, as usual, he is the man who moves it.
The president also later hedged his prediction of a quick end to fighting, saying it's a hard thing to say because they've been fighting for thousands of years. But he also said this.
Right now, they're talking about Gaza City. There's always talking about something. At some point, it's going to get settled. And I'm saying you better get it settled soon. You have to get it settled soon. And that means, you know, nobody can forget October 7th. People forget October 7th. That was one of the most brutal. I've seen some terrible things, some brutal things. That was about as bad as it gets. And nobody can forget that. With that being said, it's got to get over with.
And for the second time this month, major intersections have shut down temporarily as tens of thousands of people take to the streets across Israel to protest for the release of the hostages. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian reports from Hostages Square, where a massive rally is expected tonight. Shosh?
Well, another day of nationwide protests across Israel. I'm standing here in Hostages Square, where there are set to be installments that happen throughout the day, different messages that families of hostages want to send, pleading for their loved ones to come out of captivity. It's not as busy as it was here in Hostages Square compared to the last nationwide strike that happened, but we do expect this to fill up very, very soon. As we know, throughout the day, there will be a massive protest by the end of the evening here. But what we do know so far is that in the early morning hours, we know that protesters blocked major intersections throughout the country, taking a stand in support with the families of these hostages throughout the day. There's been different marches and other protests that have happened throughout the country as well. Tens of thousands of people have so far come to the table wanting to help as well. And we do know, like we said, there will be a massive protest that is expected to happen here in Hostages Square tonight to conclude the events. Last time nationwide, there were about 600,000 people that hit Hostages Square alone for the final protest, listening to the families of hostages and released hostages tell the stories of their experience or their loved ones that are still trapped in Hamas captivity at this point in time. We know that the family of Nimrod Cohen released a video last night of his captivity on October 7th. They did this hoping that it will push the needle forward for the government to accept whatever deal is currently on the table at this point in time. We know there's a partial deal on the table, which is seeking a 60-day ceasefire in exchange for 10 living hostages and 18 deceased hostages in exchange for about 200 Palestinian prisoners, dozens of whom are serving life sentences here in Israel for serious crimes they are convicted of. But this is what the families of hostages are hoping will happen at this point in time. time that any deal on the table will be accepted. We do know that Netanyahu has been adamant about accepting and pushing for a comprehensive deal, a deal that would bring home all 50 hostages that are still in captivity at this time, and a deal that will bring an end to the war. Take a listen to what President Trump said last night, specifically regarding his take and his help in getting these hostages out.
I'm the one that got the hostages out. I got them out, all of them. Steve Witkoff has been amazing. He's done a great job. But I'm the one that got them all out through my people and through me. And now we're left with probably a little bit less than 20, because I think 1 or 2 are gone.
If you live in the Tel Aviv area, expect for there to be a lot of traffic and chaos in the area of where the IDF headquarters are, especially here in Hasidic Square and the Ayalon, the major highway here in Tel Aviv that has served thousands of cars every single day. That's because protests will continue throughout the day, and like I said before, a massive protest is expected to commence tonight. Back to you.
Thank you, Shosh, for the report. And moving on, Prime Minister Netanyahu has issued an apology for the tragic mishap at the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, in which 20 people were killed, including several journalists and medical staff, as well as rescue workers. The IDF has launched a full investigation of the incident. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
As backlash over the incident continues to mount, Prime Minister Netanyahu posted this message saying, Israel deeply regrets the tragic mishap that occurred at the Nasser Hospital in Gaza. He added, Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. The IDF does not intentionally target civilians, and the military authorities have launched a thorough investigation. IDF spokesman Brigadier General Efi Defrin issued a statement insisting that the IDF never intentionally targets civilians in the Gaza Strip, but troops are fighting in impossible conditions.
I would like to be clear from the start. The IDF does not intentionally target civilians. The IDF makes every effort to mitigate harm to civilians while ensuring the safety of our troops. Any incident that raises concern in this regard is addressed by the relevant mechanisms in the IDF. We are operating in an extremely complex reality.
The IDF spokesman explained that Hamas had operated from the hospital in recent days.
Hamas terrorists deliberately use civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, as shields. They have even operated from the Nasser hospital itself. Hamas began this war, created impossible fighting conditions, and is preventing its end by still holding 50 of our hostages.
The army promised the investigation will be thorough and transparent.
The Chief of the General Staff has instructed that an inquiry be conducted immediately to understand the circumstances of what happened and how it happened. Reporting from an active war zone carries immense risk, especially in a war with a terrorist organization such as Hamas, who cynically hides behind the civilian population. As always, we will present our findings as transparently as possible. We regret any harm to uninvolved individuals and are committed to continue fighting Hamas while taking all the necessary precautions.
And joining us now with more on the latest developments is former Air Force Base Commander, Brigadier General in the Reserves, Israel Relik Shafir. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you and good afternoon.
So I want to start with U.S. President Donald Trump's comments on the war in Gaza. Now, he gave a prediction that the war will end in 2 to 3 weeks' time, says the fighting should end soon. But the IDF hasn't even begun its Gaza City takeover. So does this timeline add up in your view? And if not, what is the timeline that we're looking at?
Well, I think President Trump, as is obvious through his looking for support from Witkoff, it isn't up to date on the particulars of the events in Gaza, and is more of a wishful thinking than anything else. The government of Israel is in a T-junction position, where it is obvious that going into Gaza, into the Gaza City, to eradicate Hamas and the livelihood of the hostages are conflicting opportunities. And so they can't be held together, and the government has not really decided to give up on the hostages altogether. So it's amassing troops, threatening Hamas, and we'll have to stand and see what it brings, whether it brings it to any fruition. Because at this time, it looks like the movement of 1 million people from Gaza as almost an impossible situation, which will create a public outrage in the West, because there are no places for those people to go, no hospitals, no food, no tents. And so the threats and the warnings don't seem to carry much weight behind them at this time.
And yet reservists are set to be called up for service on September 2nd in a week's time, with the Gaza City operation slated to follow shortly thereafter. I mean, do you think that the IDF, though, is ready for this kind of massive operation in Gaza City? And what are the aims of this operation, and what would come after this operation?
Military-wise, it's not a difficult activity at all. Overtaking Gaza. It will take some casualties on our side, obviously, and a lot of casualties on the other side, including civilians. The question is it possible to move 1 million people from Gaza, other than killing a lot of them, moving them south? And what will happen even if they all move south with Hamas still hiding between those people moving with their weapons caches, etc.? Does that mean the end of Hamas? It doesn't. It just means destruction of Gaza, and it will not bring the war to an end, unfortunately. It'll just delay the decision-making to a further date, and bring an onslaught of diplomatic pressures on Israel. As we know, during September, some of the countries, the Western countries, have opted to recognize the Palestinian, a Palestinian state. And so we're up against some mounting pressures, and nobody knows where it will end, particularly since Hamas is welcoming Israeli pressure into Gaza.
I mean, we have seen Israel move, millions of Palestinian civilians before. We saw this in the south in Rafah. It was also said that it couldn't be done, and in the end, Israel did do it. Now, I also want to discuss the events in the hospital yesterday, which left several journalists killed. You know, the IDF says very clearly it doesn't target journalists, and this was a tragic accident. And, you know, today new details are being revealed about some of these journalists, one who clearly took part in October 7th. There's documented footage of this, while others we see are sort of pawns of Hamas. You know, a quick scroll through their social media reveals praise of Hamas, praise of October 7th, and so on. But what do you make of this, and what do you make of this incident?
It's certainly a mistake, and the fact that some supporters of Hamas were killed makes no difference. Obviously, they weren't targeted as persona, and the events, I think, have to do with easy trigger soldiers who were in the front and were not actually aware of the fact of where they were shooting at, either tanks or artillery. And so this is an unintentional outcome, and the fact that we apologize for this, I think, goes to show that we care about the life of people, whether they like us or not. These people were not targeted, and the fact that, and the after fact, that some of them were supporters of Hamas make no difference. I think, and I know that this was not a premeditated attack. And so we should be sorry for any life that is lost for no cause.
Absolutely. Brigadier General Israel Relik Shafir, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you.
Jerusalem, 1913. There's an epidemic. Up to 90% of children had trachoma. Thousands went blind. Yet one woman had a vision. It started with 2 nurses from America, and today it's 2 world-renowned medical centers, treating more than 1 million people a year, plus youth villages, saving hundreds of thousands since the Holocaust. This is the work of Hadassah, America's largest Jewish women's organization, and a life-changing force in Israel. We helped build Israel's health infrastructure, saved lives during every war and crisis. And now, Hadassah hospitals are pioneering personalized medicine with robotics, 3D printing, AI, and providing essential trauma care. For over 100 years, our vision has been clear: to help heal our world. This is Hadassah.
And moving on, Hezbollah has quickly rejected the U.S. brokered deal between Israel and Lebanon for an end to the hostilities between the countries. The Hezbollah leadership said civil war is preferred to accepting foreign dictates and vowed that the terrorist group will not hand over its weapons to the Lebanese army. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
After the initial optimism expressed by the U.S. and Israel over the Lebanese government commitment to fully disarm Hezbollah, Hezbollah leader Qasem was quick to slam the plan while vowing to keep his arms. In a taped message played at a memorial for fighters killed in the war with Israel, Hezbollah leader Naim Qasem termed the deal between Israel and Lebanon foreign imposed.
وهذا القرار الحكومي اتخذ تحت الإملاءات الأمريكية الإسرائيلية. هذه الحكومة إذا استمرت بهذه الصيغة هي ليست أمينة على سيادة لبنان إلا إذا تراجعت عن قرارها، والتراجع فضيلة. السلاح الذي أعزنا لن نتخلى عنه، والسلاح الذي يحمينا من عدونا لن نتخلى عنه. لن نترك إسرائيل تسرح وتمرح في بلدنا وتقتل المقاومين وتصادر الجنوب.
And indeed, Hezbollah continues to make threatening moves against Israel in violation of the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. The IDF confirmed that it killed a Hezbollah terrorist in the area of Tibnin in southern Lebanon. According to the army, the individual had been working to rebuild Hezbollah infrastructure in nearby Beit Lif. Israel has welcomed the Lebanese government's stated commitment to disarm Hezbollah by the end of the year. In return, Israel would carry out a phased pullback from Lebanese territory and end cross-border strikes, but that only if Hezbollah is actually disarmed.
Israel Bonds, the heartbeat of solidarity, the powerhouse of support. When the Israeli-Hamas war hit, Israel Bonds stood tall, proving we're more than just an investment, we're a lifeline. Israel Bonds pledges to ensure Israel thrives and flourishes. Investing in Israel Bonds isn't just a financial move, it's a declaration for resilience, strength, and a better future for Israel. Join us and let solidarity echo through generations.
And it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that was behind a pair of 2024 anti-Semitic attacks in Australia. That's the word from Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as he announced that Canberra was expelling Tehran's ambassador. The Australian president also said that its diplomats from Iran will be recalled and will move for legislation that will label the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terror organization. The announcement comes only days after Prime Minister Netanyahu sent a scathing letter to Albanese accusing him of failing to act against anti-Semitism in his country and gave him a deadline of next month's Rosh Hashanah New Year holiday to act. At the press conference, Albanese said the Australian Security Intelligence Organization has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion: that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of the recent attacks on Australia's Jewish community. Let's hear what he had to say.
ASIO has now gathered enough credible intelligence to reach a deeply disturbing conclusion that the Iranian government directed at least 2 of these attacks. Iran has sought to disguise its involvement, but ASIO assesses it was behind the attacks on the Lewis Continental Kitchen in Sydney on October 20 last year and the Adass Israel Synagogue in Melbourne on December 6 last year.
And before we move on, a quick word about how you can support independent journalism. At ILTV, we're committed to bringing you original reporting and stories from Israel that often don't make it into the global spotlight. So if you value diverse perspectives and reliable coverage, consider subscribing through our app by scanning the QR code on your screen. Your support helps ILTV News grow, expand our reporting, and ensure stories from this region are told with clarity and integrity. Together, we can continue building journalism that informs, connects, and inspires. And our final story tonight, the city of David is one of the most famous excavation sites in Israel. And a new discovery is now giving archaeologists insight into the life of everyday Jerusalemites from 800 BC. ILTV's Debo Klein has the story.
A massive dam was just uncovered in Jerusalem's City of David. Excavators from the Israel Antiquities Authority have used carbon dating to discover that this dam actually dates back to 2,800 years ago, during the reign of the kings Yoash and Amaziah. The location, materials, and evidence collected from this ancient dam is revealing the lifestyle and basic needs of the Jerusalemites in 800 BC. This dam was part of the Siloam Pool. The Siloam Pool was the lowest point in Jerusalem and the largest water reserve that collected rainwaters from around the city and the Gihon Springs. Excavators found that this massive dam was used to prevent water from trickling down to the Dead Sea, strategically built in an effort to preserve water during challenging climates. The dating of the dam offers tangible evidence of the strength of the kingdoms of Judah during this time period. This dam is unique in its size, standing at over 11 meters high. Archaeologists at the Israel Antiquities Authority estimate that no dam, at least from the same time period, has ever come close to reaching the size of the dam of the Siloam Pool. Already 2,800 years ago, Jews living in Jerusalem found sophisticated ways to apply outstanding engineering and devise a creative solution to curb a severe climate issue. The combination of the exact sciences with archaeological research sheds new and indisputable light of our nation's history in the days of the First Temple.
Even more evidence of the connection of the Jewish people to Jerusalem and to Israel. As the IDF continues to amass troops on the Gaza border ahead of the planned capture of Gaza City, U.S. President Donald Trump is saying that he expects the war to end within 2 or 3 weeks. But the president's comments do not line up with the IDF's scheduled war plan to capture Gaza City by October. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Israel is still in the process of mobilizing the reserves, and the offensive to capture Gaza City is not due to begin until next month and conclude in October. Currently, tanks are gathering at the border and IDF operations inside Gaza are ongoing, but the plan to move 1 million Gazans from the north to the south of the enclave and the IDF maneuvers to capture Gaza City are only due to begin in the middle of September at the earliest. But during a meeting attended by Secretary of State Rubio and hostage talks envoy Steve Witkoff, U.S. President Donald Trump predicted that the war in Gaza will reach a conclusive ending in 2 or 3 weeks.
It's a terrible situation over there, terrible, terrible situation. But it's coming to a head, it's coming to an end. I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to have a pretty good conclusive ending.
Instead of providing an explanation for his optimism, Trump instead turned to Secretary of State Rubio and U.S. Middle East